G'day everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the history and evolution of AFL/VFL preseason competitions. Throughout the decades, there's been many different types of AFL preseason competitions, such as the Wizards Home Loans Cup, the NAB Cup, and of course AFLX. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated, and let's get into it. So my guess is that pretty much an average AFL fan would probably know at least 3 different preseason competitions. But not many people know that the AFL/VFL preseason competitions started way back in 1956. This was the very first year where VFL preseason competitions were formed, and it was under the name of the Night Series Cup. How this preseason competition did work was that simply the bottom 8 teams of a VFL ladder each year that did not make finals would compete in the Night Series Cup. So this gave VFL teams that did not make finals something to do during the finals series. So the Night Series Cup took place at the end of each VFL home and away season. The competition took place from 1956 all the way up to 1971, with every single game being played at Lake Oval in Melbourne. The format of the very first Night Series Cup was quite simply 3 rounds, starting off as quarterfinals, semi-finals and then the grand final. In the inaugural competition, South Melbourne defeated Carlton by 6 points. The reason why all the games were being hosted at Lake Oval was because it was the only ground in Melbourne that was equipped to host night games with the floodlights. The very next year in 1957, the VFL decided to experiment as they expanded the preseason competition to have all 12 teams competing, including the top 4 teams that made finals. The VFL winners of 1957 that year were the Melbourne Demons, and yes, during that grand final week they did compete in a VFL Night Series game. They played in a round 2 loss against 𝐓𝐡𝐞 only 5 days after their VFL grand final. The next year in 1958, they decided to change it back to only the bottom 8 teams competing, and this continued all the way up until 1971. Here's a list of all the VFL teams that managed to win a VFL Night Series for anybody that's interested. From 1972 to 1976, there are no official VFL Night Series held. But in 1976, an organisation by the name of the National Football League, which was the national governing body for all Australian football clubs across all the states of Australia, held their own night series midweek during the season, known as the Willis Cup. How the Willis Cup worked was that the top teams from the VFL, the SANFL and the WAFL competed in a group and knockout stage format. That year the grand final had 2 VFL teams competing as Hawthorn beat North Melbourne by 48 points. This gave the VFL inspiration to revive their VFL Night Series preseason competitions again. So then that next year in 1977, the VFL also held a midweek preseason competition, and it was televised on Channel 7 to rival the National Football League series that was shown on Channel 10. That year of the VFL Night Series, it went back to competing with 12 teams, just like it did back in 1957. Compared to 1971, with instead of having the 8 teams that did not make finals competing, and they were played in September and October, this VFL Night Series had, just said earlier, all 12 VFL clubs competing, which was played midweek throughout the VFL Premiership season between May and August. That next year in 1978, the VFL decided to open up their Night Series preseason competition to allow SANFL, WAFL and representative teams from the ACT, New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania to also compete. This became known as the Australian Football Championships Night Series, and it ran until 1987. How the format of the Australian Football Championships Night Series worked started off with a qualification process, with the top 11 teams of the VFL qualifying, and also the winners and runners-up of the SANFL and the WAFL competing too. Then there would be 2 teams entering in a qualifying playoff, with one of the teams being whoever came 12th place in the previous season of the VFL, and the other team being a state team of whoever were the winners of the Escort Shield, which was a small state football tournament that consisted of Tasmania, New South Wales, ACT and Queensland. The winner of that qualifying playoff would take a final spot in the AFC Night Series. After the qualifying playoff, it would simply consist in a knockout stage, with round 1 being played, then quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then the grand final. So with the Australian Football Championships Night Series, the games were played at Waverley Park. The competition would generally begin in early March, around a month before the regular VFL season began, and it would finish in July. And here were the winners from 1977 to 1987. Then from 1998 onwards, the VFL made a drastic change in regards to pre-season competitions. They changed it round so that a pre-season competition was played entirely before the premiership season began that year, and it'd only be competed by VFL/AFL sides. This was the year where we would start to see the modern day format of AFL pre-season competitions. This would of course overlap the transition from VFL to AFL, so that meant that the pre-season tournament were not restricted just to one oval anymore, with games being played at stadiums like the Gabba, the 𝐼𝐴𝐴, and even Tasmania. So from 1988 to 2013, the VFL Preseason tournament would adopt different names, such as in chronological order, the Panasonic Cup, the Foster's Cup, the 𝐼𝐴𝐴 Cup, the 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿 Cup, and finally the 𝐼𝐵 Cup. So with a quick overview, most of the games during these preseason competitions, including the final, were night matches. Games were typically played slightly short of full length, with quarters lasting from around 17 to 18 minutes, plus time on instead of the normal 20 minutes, and there was also an extended interchange bench, to give coaches the opportunity to play more youth, and it was less physically demanding for playing groups. And the competitions had a simple knockout format. Right before the 1996 𝐴nset Cup, the AFL decided to experiment with a one-off knockout competition called the Lightning Premiership. The premiership only lasted for 3 days, so it was almost like, I guess you could say, a weekend football carnival. The games were played in early February, played at Waverley Park, and they each consisted of two 17.5 minute halves. The games trialled with a number of highly experimental rules, including 3 points awarded for both deliberate rush behinds and balls which hit the goalposts, and timekeepers not blowing the siren if the scores were tied. There would be a rule, however, that would alter play very significantly, where the ball would not be thrown in from the boundary line after travelling out of bounds, instead with a free kick being awarded against the last team to touch the ball. There were also a handful of other rules that were implemented as well, so make sure to pause the video if you're interested. Pre-season competitions remained a knockout format until 2000, when it briefly became a round-robin format. It was then reverted back to a knockout format in 2003. So year by year, these pre-season cups, especially the 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 Cup, were getting bigger and bigger in attendance, with for example the 2004 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 Cup having just over 50,000 in attendance in the grand final at Marvel Stadium, which can hold around 54,000, so pretty much a sold out venue. Pre-season AFL just seemed to be a massive thing in the 2000s. Even though it was a pre-season competition, there were still no excuses for roaring fans cheering on their teams to hopefully win a bit of silverware. The fans were jubilant, but the players, not so much. So as the pre-season competitions from the mid-2000s kept on evolving, so did the rules. Here's a list of rule changes that were implemented. Pause the video if you're interested to see. One of the most notable rules being known as the super goal rule. This was introduced in 2003, which simply was a super goal which scored 9 points was awarded for a goal being kicked from beyond the 50-metre arc. There was quite a drastic change in the 2011 𝗏𝐵 Cup. With the introduction of the Gold Coast Suns and the Giants entering the competition, there was quite a big change to the format. Instead of a typical knockout format with the 16 teams, with the 2011 𝗏𝐵 Cup, how it worked was the 18 teams were split into 6 pools of 3 teams each. 3 teams in each pool would play each other once in games of 2 20-minute halves, with all 3 games being played over a 3-hour period at the one venue. The highest ranked team from each pool would advance through the quarterfinals alongside the next 2 best ranked teams. Then from there it was a typical knockout format. So these AFL pre-season competition formats would go on until 2013. Then the next year in 2014, the AFL decided to remove the competitive aspect of pre-season matches. This meant that there were no more knockout stages or a grand final winner. They were instead replaced with a series of discrete practice matches, spanning from a 3 to 4 week period prior to the home and away season. The competition was now under the new name of the 𝗏𝐵 Challenge. The 𝗏𝐵 Challenge would go on from 2014 to 2016. 2017 to 2019 it would be renamed to the JLT Community Series. 2020 it would be known as the 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 Community Series. And currently, at the time of recording this video from 2021 to the present, it is now known as the 𝐴𝐸 Community Series. The format of the NAB Challenge was that a team played 2 to 3 games over 2 to 3 weeks. This would be the same for the JLT Community Series and the 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 Community Series. Then currently with the 𝐴𝐸 Community Series, a team only plays 1 game over a week, also including a pre-season practice match around a week before. And of course, there is one pre-season competition I'm yet to go over, and that is AFLX. AFLX was founded in 2017 by CEO 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝. He stated that AFLX would help promote football internationally. The brand new, fresh and exciting looking competition was not a competition that would replace the JLT Community Series. This was instead an addition, as AFLX games were played in the month of February, around a month prior to the JLT Community Series matches. The whole competition was a complete revamp of AFL field dimensions and rules. Instead of a typical oval-sized field, the field was now rectangular like a rugby field, around 100 to 120 metres long and 60 to 70 metres in width. There'd be 10 players on each team, with 7 each taking the field and 3 each on the interchange. And there'd be many other minor rule additions, such as a shot clock and the ability to kick the ball in after any score. There are actually many more other rules to go over, so I'll continue to leave this video running in the background. AFLX would also see the return of pre-season competitions with a knockout stage and a grand final winner. AFLX would host in 3 cities of Adelaide, Sydney and Melbourne, with 3 groups. Group A would be in Adelaide, Group B would be in Melbourne and Group C would be in Sydney. In each group there would be 2 pools of 3 teams, with a round robin format with each team playing each other once, and then the top team of each pool would advance through. Since each group had 2 pools, that meant the first place from Pool A and Pool B of each group would advance to a grand final. In the inaugural season of 2018, Adelaide would beat Geelong in Group A, the Demons would beat the Hawks in Group B, and the Brisbane Lions would defeat the Sydney Swans in Group C. The 2019 AFLX season would see a total revamp, with a whole new set of rules and also a complete makeover to the teams competing. Instead of typical AFL clubs competing, there are now 4 fantasy teams being filled with AFL stars all across the league. There were the Bolts, captained by Patrick Dangerfield, Rampage, captained by Jack Riewoldt, the Flyers, captained by Nat Fyfe, and Deadly, captained by Eddie Betts. The 2019 AFLX competition would be an all-day event held on the 22nd of February. Each team would play each other once in games with 2 10-minute halves, and the top 2 would go straight through to a grand final. Compared to the season before, there was a new rule added to the competition, where teams could nominate one of their players on the field to be the Gatorade Game Changer for the last 5 minutes of the game. The Game Changer had the ability to score double points of any other player. Jack Riewoldt's Rampage side managed to beat Nat Fyfe's Flyers side 84 to 67 in the grand final. After the 2019 competition, the reception of the game among fans and media was actually mostly poor, with many journalists leaving negative comments about the competition. Manny Lloyd saying it was absolute rubbish, Caroline Wilson saying it was a massive waste of money and that they instead should have promoted more on the AFL women's game, and also ABC Grandstand journalist Richard Hines stating it was a hollow, unappealing, pressure-free, atmosphere-deficient, oval and a rectangle hole yawn fest. Bit harsh. Then just before the end of the 2019 home and away season, the AFL had made the executive decision to cease the competition for 2020, therefore meaning AFLX was now history. So there you have it everybody, there is a complete look at the history and evolution of AFL preseason competitions. If you learnt something new or enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, that'd be much appreciated. We're closing in on 10,000 subscribers, it's a goal that I've wanted to hit for quite some time now, so I'm hoping we can hit it very soon, so all your support means everything. So I hope you enjoyed today's video everybody, and I'll talk to you later. See you later fellas.